Cool.
Hello, I'm Christina Simmons with the Say Yes to Holiness podcast, and I am so excited that you have joined me today for conversation. And I have a really special guest with me. Christine and I cross paths in the Unstoppable Entrepreneur, and I was just absolutely fascinated by the work that she does. And so I really wanted to share what she does with my audience and to allow each of you to get to know this really incredible and special woman. So, Christine, without further ado, go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're at, and what it is that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. My name is Christine Cardoza, and I am one of the founders of the Healing Soul School. And I'm from Toronto, Canada, born and raised, and I've also lived and traveled abroad.
Mm. Wow. I am absolutely fascinated by the whole concept of a healing soul school. But before we get there, part of what was our conversation and led to a lot of really good conversation for us was just in you sharing your story. And so, could you kind of give a little bit of background about your story, and then also kind of where you what led you to being one of the co-founders of the Healing Souls School? Mhm.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So my story starts, I was born into the Jehovah's Witness religion and was able to leave at 13. I just knew at that time that anyone who didn't fit into the rules or who had disobeyed was automatically disfellowshipped or shunned from the organization, their family. It was, a complete, they were dead to them almost. And at 13, I just understood that that didn't feel like God's love. And I had asked if I could please not go back, and thankfully was granted. After that, I went to a Catholic high school, and that didn't feel like a fit for me and, in the spiritual world. And then I married into a Baptist family, and I really felt alive. I felt like they were preaching the truth, so to speak, from the front. And after a lot of years of healing and such, after my divorce, I realized that it had a lot to do with the herd mentality. And I felt accepted by a group again,
Mhm.
very much like a cult, where if you try to leave, then you're shunned or you're put down or not talked to, that kind of thing. And that really is prevalent with the Jehovah's Witnesses. There's also a lot of fear-based programming
Mm.
in the religions as well. If you don't do this, you're going to die, or Armageddon is coming. And so you really live this life in fear and not having security, because you could be out of the tribe or out of the community at any moment. And I didn't realize that all of that was sitting in my subconscious until this year. I had been studying and doing some energy healing and energy work, which was considered, evil or taboo in
Mhm.
any of the religious circles that I was in. And I really just got curious, and I thought, well, what is this to Reiki and different things? And so as I started to do my own research, I really found a beautiful way to help people heal themselves. So teaching them how to heal themselves and to be independent. And so I opened the Healing Soul School. We have a monthly conscious business showcase, because I wanted to be able to bring other heart-led or soul-led entrepreneurs together, see what they're doing, interview them, how they're making a difference in the world. And through that, I was meeting all of these great entrepreneurs and realizing, that I was still stuck. I was still feeling that, I wanted to move forward, or I'd take two steps forward and I'd get pulled right back. And I had a depression about 4 years ago, and I really started to study the mind and how it works, and how we get caught in our loops and such. And it was this past January, I was teaching mindset and a little bit of law of attraction I had learned this year, and different things, and teaching people how to live more in a beautiful state versus a suffering state. But I was suffering inside, and I didn't realize, and I just felt like I was being pulled backwards. I was on this muddy slope, and I just could feel I was being pulled right back down. And I was so confused. So I started to do more digging and, more trying to understand, was it a dark night of the soul? Was it depression? What was it? And, it was more of the junk that was hiding in my subconscious. And I didn't realize the effect that it had on my self-esteem and who I was. And as we are, in on any entrepreneurial business, is when you try to move forward, your mindset also has to move up with you, because your ego can be there and say, hey, imposter syndrome, that's not who
Yep.
you are. What do
Mm.
you think you're doing?
Yeah.
And so as I was learning all that, I just said, you know what, God, show me what's hiding. I am ready, to step
Mhm.
into that. And there was a lot of worth and shame and fear tied to money. And I
Mm.
had done a couple of subconscious clearing meditations. And the one that I went into that stuck out was I was in jail when I went, into the subconscious meditation around money. How do I view money? And I
Mhm.
was in jail. I was feeding it bread and water. I'm like, no wonder I've suffered, financially and such. And
Mm.
not putting all of the dots together just yet, that even in religions, they teach a lot about money, and how if you have money, then, it's not that money is evil necessarily, but you're not to worship it. You're not to put yourself up
Mhm.
ahead, of others, and to give to others, and a lot
Mhm.
of scarcity mindset.
Right.
And thankfully, through that, just the last part of the story is I founded an ex Jehovah's Witness group that they're called the Empowered ex Jehovah's
Mhm.
Witness group. And through that, I've been able to heal the extra parts of those onion layers that are showing me how much shame and fear of criticism, fear of being seen, fear of rejection that I've been holding on to from the years as a child, when we would go knocking door to door, or having to stand in the hallway, or being different, having to skip maybe birthday celebrations or whatever, and always being asked why. And so it's been really interesting. And through all of that, I really wanted to help those who were suffering, who had been raised in fear or in abuse. And that's really our mission, is to to help stop the suffering.
Mm. Absolutely beautiful. There's so much suffering that's out there, and when we've talked before, we've talked about the fact that so many people step into judgment, and it's because of this mindset that people have of, if you don't do something exactly this way in this particular manner, then that means that you're excluded, and there's some sort of judgment that comes, and so in order for us to, as you said, be, accepted within that community, we then take on that judgment ourselves. And so it's one of those of where a lot of people forget that, the Catholic Church, the four principles, the main one being Catholic, but it's the small c of meaning universal, of where, James Joyce, I think it was, who wrote, hey, here comes the church, here comes everybody. And so often we want to exclude versus to welcome. Pope Francis has been doing such a beautiful job in reminding us constantly that we're to go to the peripheries, we're to go to those who are marginalized, to those who are the suffering, those, he tells his pastors, you got to smell like the sheep, you got to be out there with them. And, so to encounter someone, who is actively trying to take steps in order to help people be able to encounter, experience healing. It's so desperately needed. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Um, you know, People, who are listening to my podcast right now, for example, they might be like, Christina, you're a Catholic, podcaster, what are we doing talking with a former Jehovah's Witness who's, advocating, Reiki, and, and it's like, that's not what I'm not here about that. Rather, we're here about the fact that together we all need to bring about healing and stepping out of our boxes, any way that we have created boxes, or boxes been created for us.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful of them, and we need to allow them to be healed. And so that's something where within church tradition, okay, for over 2000 years, there is, so now it's kind of called like a healing of memories is the common phrase, but it's the same kind of work, of where there has been, so much pain and suffering because there's been a misunderstanding of
Right.
how it is that we're supposed to be people. But What is it specifically that you focus upon? You're talking about mindset. So in the Healing Soul School, what is it that you have found to be like kind of the key for people to be able to kind of open those doors and really move into healing?
Great question. It's really about going within, connecting to
Mhm.
ourselves within. We've been taught that happiness and God and all of that is outside of us when
Uh,
really, it's connecting back in through meditation. That's our biggest one. What are the thoughts you're thinking, your patterns? If you
mhm,
have any types of emotions, where did that come from? It's really getting curious and
mhm,
unpacking what those patterns are. It's, we have things that we're going through right now, but this is not when it started. There's a
right.
certain self belief that we have. And often that started, 0 to 7 years when our subconscious didn't have the bodyguard, as I like to say. Anything that goes in, it's what the kids take as face value and real. And it could be, they were raised in a great home with loving parents, but for whatever reason, a need wasn't met. We all have traumas. We all have, pains and such. No one's
Mhm,
exempt in this life, but it's something that we use to find the gift in, right? We heal and evolve from that. And often, part of those patterns, it could be what happened in the womb, and we took on the feelings of our parents and what was going on at the time, or even epigenetically through science, is what happened to our grandparents. They
mhm,
say that, there's 3 generations of eggs in our grandparents. And so, all of that carried down, and all of our grandparents have been part of wars, the depression, if you go back
mhm,
even a little bit more. So it's really just looking at, what is all there, and breath work, being able to come back and calm the immune system. I have, heard about meditation through the years, and I've done yoga and all that stuff, but it wasn't until our expert meditation coach, Virginia, that is the co-founder with me. She actually taught me how to get quiet and go within and
mhm,
meditate.
mhm,
And that was last October. And what happened is, as I've been calming my nervous system, I've started to realize that I didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't realize that. And a lot of that comes from my childhood. And I'm holding my breath, and that's anxiety. And I didn't know that I had that as well until I could stop some of the fight or flight that I had been in, or freeze really, and
mhm,
really calm down. That now I'm starting to feel and observe things in my body. And the breath is really important, because
mhm,
even just in a quiet moment, if I can offer this, to your viewers, is that just hold your heart and your belly. Take a couple deep breaths and just say, I am safe, or I am capable, or I am loved,
mhm,
whatever it is that you're feeling the opposite of in that moment. And just take those 3 deep breaths and come back into your body, into that
mhm.
safe, calm space. And now your brain is calming. I raise a little one, so I always, when she's having a temper tantrum or freaking out, it's like, okay, let's put your thinking brain back in, right? Like, take a couple deep breaths and come back to that whole brain, instead of the area of maybe, fight or flight. We cannot make great decisions from that.
Exactly. I'm a huge geek when it comes to human peak performance, and breath work is a huge part of it.
Cool.
And it's absolutely amazing to me. So it's all about perspective. But it amazes me that God created us specifically to be able to take in that breath and breathe out. And when we think about what's the creation story, how
Yes.
did Adam come to be? God, breathed into his
Hmm.
nostrils. And, in fact, the science says breathing in through our nose and out through our nose is far more effective. Well, I mean, there's reasons why this is so rooted, but yet sometimes we miss it. I want to go back just very briefly about the importance, because this is work that's being done within the Catholic sphere. In particular, Unbound is the book and the ministry that's associated with it, Unleashed, Unbound, and it's about generational trauma,
Mm.
and it's about us recognizing the fact that even though we ourselves might not have experienced it, it still is, we're still carrying it within our genetics.
Yeah.
And for us to not recognize that, Part of it is because our American individualism, we want to go, I'm just my own person, and my parents don't shape me, I shape myself, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. We do a lot of it. I mean, and that's why it's so important to do the mindset work, to do the meditation, to do the breath work, because we have a great deal of power to open ourselves up to that transformation that God desires for us, because he wants us to live in abundance. He doesn't want this scarcity. But going back to what you had said about that generational trauma, when you hear about it, it's something where you're going, how does that work? And it's a matter of, so within the Catholic framework, we have the opportunity in our understanding of who God is as the eternal, is that time, past, present, future, it's all present now. And so it's hard for us to get our brains wrapped around it. But the fact is that we can bring about healing for generations past by what it is that we do now. We're able to alleviate that suffering now. We call that the communion of saints. I mean,
Mm,
and people miss that aspect because they're thinking people in heaven, they're already there. People in purgatory, they're there, and then people now on earth, and we're thinking, future, and it's because we're thinking linearly about time rather than, stepping into the moment and Kairos time. But I digress. I'm sorry. So, when you were working within your own journey, generationally, was your grandparents, were they Jehovah's Witnesses as well?
yes, I'm
Okay.
third generation. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm not going to ask unless you're comfortable, but how much has that impacted your own journey carrying the weight of all of that now? Um, you know,
That's a really good way to put it, the weight. That's what it has been, definitely. Grandma, I feel, went in a very vulnerable state. She was a single mom back in the 60s with 5 children and
Mhm.
another one on the way. Had just broken up, with my grandfather. And it was, I feel, they're beautiful people. I have nothing,
Mhm.
the people who are in the Jehovah's Witnesses are definitely, well-hearted people. I
Mhm.
just feel that there's so much that so much brainwashing that goes on, and just even the like lack of boundaries, and there's a lot of, I'm going to say, narcissistic type activities and
Mhm.
behaviors that come through that, and that kind of control of, you can only look at what we're doing, for any kind of research. You have to look through our books. You can't, look
Mhm.
online. You can't go to college, university, all those kinds of things to keep them in the fold and to keep them really close. Well, people like me who are the thinkers, and who ask why, are not suited. And
Yep.
maybe that's why, I was able to break free from that, generationally, because it just inside didn't feel that it was right, or God's love. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's been a lot of pain. I mean, even though I've been out for over 30 years, I still have family that are in, half of my family. And so
Mm.
very much it's our side of the family and their side of the family, right? Of those who are still in, and there is so much judgment.
Yeah.
You are always on eggshells, and what are you saying, or how are you showing up online, all of those things, because people are watching. And what happens is, when you have that feeling of you can't just be yourself, you're always on high alert. What happens is you start to not trust your environment. You don't trust the people who were your caretakers, or those who were to look after you. And then you start to lose trust in yourself, and it's the cycle until you can actually get help, or really see what is happening there from the mindset, from that other perspective, which is really important to be able to start to heal and to release and say, okay, what do I believe, and why? Where did that all come from?
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it brings back the point that I always, stress to people, which is that everything matters and everything can make a difference. The smallest things that we don't even think about, they have an impact. And so instead of it paralyzing us, Rather, what it should do is that it should free us to be our full selves, because God created us to be exactly who we are. But it's to be our best self. So it's about recognizing those places where there's woundedness, where there's disorderedness, and for us to do the work so that we can show up as our best selves, as moms, as dads, as co-workers, as friends, as people in the community in whatever capacity. And it can help other people as well. It can help them be able to, as you were saying, you begin to mistrust, your environment, the people. But by us showing up authentically and fully, what happens is that we're able to bring about a sense of healing and a sense of empowerment for people to then take those steps that they need to take on a personal level, because we are so interconnected, generationally, as well as people joke about the 6 steps, sorry, not 6 steps, but 6 degrees of
Right.
separation. But the fact is that that's the truth. We are that interconnected.
Right.
Just because I can't see what the connections are doesn't mean that they're not there. And
Mhm.
so I'm so excited again about the work that you're doing, that is so desperately needed in a world that is so full of woundedness and pain and judgment, and anger. And I think that's a lot of where anger comes out too, is the fact of people realize that there's so much that they're not able to control, and our natural response is to be angry about it and then to lash out, and then
Mhm.
we continue to perpetuate. uh, but
Back on what you had said, I think, like, yes, there are the steps to healing that people can take, but if you've been raised in scarcity or survival
Mhm,
and, one false move and you're out of the clan, so to speak, then I feel that you have to get to this place of being aware. Being aware is really step one of, wait a minute,
mm,
before that healing journey can start, because then you're just putting band-aids on feelings that you think are in the now, when really there's that root of just your basic survival needs and such. So I really feel, if there is someone who has something that keeps reoccurring, or that, is a harder emotion, something, like, really just look at, is this a pattern in your life, and where did it start? Because then that's your medicine. It's gonna start to
mm,
show you where you can start to heal and
mhm.
get that help that you need.
Yeah, so you were talking about you're doing a, mindset, workshop, seminar. What is it that's coming up? Mm,
Yeah, through the subconscious. So it's all about healing your past and the subconscious, and really knowing those patterns and where they are. So that is something that we have in our Facebook group, which is My Soul Reconnection by Healing Soul School. And we're teaching people, anyone who's lived in trauma or fear or abuse, we're outside of our bodies. So it's really teaching how to come back into your body, how to feel safe, how to calm that nervous system, and then also to start to look at the patterns in the subconscious that are holding you back, that you don't even know are running.
mhm. Yeah, it amazes me when you go back and you especially look within scripture and you see how Jesus encounters people always where they where they are.
Hmm.
And, many people will be like, well, why didn't he heal everybody, for example? All right. And I'm like, because those people didn't need to be healed in order for them to accept the truth of who he was. But there were many people who needed that human healing first before they would then be open to
Mm.
encountering him. And so the church always is teaching holistically, to look at the person holistically, and the human is what the spiritual is built upon. So when we're struggling with things in our human selves, all those aspects of, you were talking about, if we're walking around in, from trauma, with fear, with scarcity, that's there, then we're not able to think of anything else except fight or flight, as you were saying.
Right.
So many times we have to do that work. And I have, freely shared with people that I've been in counseling. I've gone through, different periods and where I've needed that additional assistance in order to be able to do that work. So then I would be able to do the additional work that, that God desires for me. But so it's something of where as again, I commend you for the work that you're doing, and it is so desperately needed. And also, know of my admiration for your own journey and for your courageousness to be able to take those steps that you've needed to take in order to move beyond the generational trauma that you've had, but then also for you to become the beautiful woman that you are and doing the work for other people. So it's always a great treat to be able to spend time with someone like yourself on the podcast. So one more time, let people know where they can find out more again about you and connect with you if they're interested in any way.
Right. Great, thank you. So our Facebook group is My Soul Reconnection by Healing Soul School. We're on Instagram, we're on Clubhouse. We have a club there, Healing Soul School. And probably the most content we would have is on our YouTube channel, which is Healing Soul School. And there you'll find the Conscious Business Showcase, where we interview soul-led leaders, heart-led leaders, and share, everyone has 30 minutes to share what they're doing. So if any of your viewers fall into that category and would like an opportunity to speak on our showcase, then they can reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, or just reach out even through any of our outlets for Healing Soul School, and we will get you connected. It's always the last Friday and Saturday of the month. This next month, actually, if I may say, for May 2021 is all about trauma. So if you've had any kind of trauma growing up, whether it's from parents or emotionally absent parents, abuse, religion, anything that has left you feeling, where it's maybe been a little bit harder to control or look after in your life, we are going to have people who are entrepreneurs and did come through something and are now successful in what they're doing and how they've been able to be victorious and to conquer the things that they had gone through. And then also some guest speakers, experts on childhood abuse, trauma, people who are teaching others how to be able to heal their life and to live a relatively normal life, whatever normal is for us.
Right. Yeah. I think normal went out the window really about 18 months ago.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
but that's okay. I never really liked normal. Um,
Same.
but again, it's been such a pleasure, Christina. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time. And thank you for everybody for joining me today for this conversation. I hope that has provided some inspiration, some encouragement, and also in accompanying you as you continue to pursue holiness, to become that person that God created you to be and embrace that life of purpose, peace, and abundance that He created you for. Have a blessed day.